Today I'm going to give you some update, especially the Ignite talk I did. If you want to see the full talk, there's the link in the slide, AKMS Microsoft Ignite 2019 STR30. Really simple to remember. And if you go there, you'll see the full talk. I thought I would give some different themes together and give a talk today, and also give you an understanding of where we are heading. So for folks that don't know me, unlike Vesa, I have a picture of myself there, so picture of Chuck's. And I started as a developer in 2007, SharePoint 2007, and then I worked as a developer, as a consultant, working on a lot of SharePoint projects, deploying SharePoint on-prem web content management solutions. And then I moved to Microsoft and joined the Visual Studio SharePoint developer tools and built all of the tooling for add-ins for the SharePoint 2013. And then I moved to SharePoint team when we were restructuring the entire dev platform and thinking about how do we move forward. So I was fortunate to work in the team that was basically geared up the SPFX and all of the things that you see today. And from there, after SPFX, I decided to go to the next journey of transforming the SharePoint business process automation, which is one of the key areas. If you look at all of the makers and end users that use, tools like SharePoint Designer, InfoPath, and now Power Apps and Flow to build business processes, whether it's a simple one or something complex to go and do multi-stage processes. So business process solutions for SharePoint, really it starts with SharePoint list and libraries. So with abundance features available with these list and libraries, you can really build a solution or an app and go around to collect, manage, and distribute content. So we see there is a strong urge for a need like that, especially within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. And that's where the business process starts, right? You can start as simple as, I just want a list, but then you could quickly go into developing solutions with low-code, no-code apps like Power Apps and Flow, and start infusing the processes that you want. And if you even go further, you can even connect them to Power BI and other cognitive services to drive more insights from the data you have. So there's a lot of investments going on with SharePoint lists and libraries to ensure that they are ready for businesses to adopt as apps, so you can go build on top of those lists and libraries. But however, we do want to have business process available to everybody, right? So it's not just for a specific class of people. We want to have a continuum that every user using the list is able to go and get what they want to do with the list and enable their users to get things done. So it really starts for us from a product team, giving you all of the power in the native efficiency, right? So I want to create a list. I want to send the list for collecting data. I want to have easier and quicker ways to input data. So we're making a ton of changes there. You already saw from SharePoint Conference, we have been making some changes to the new list experience, create new list experience that also allows you to create lists from an Excel file or from an existing list. And also, we're making a ton of changes to Quick Edit. We know Quick Edit is being used a lot, and many customers love it. So we wanted to modernize that experience as well, which really we neglected for quite a while, right? So we are doing a ton of changes there. And you'll also see us adding more column types and whatnot to surface some of the business scenarios that revolves around list. And then we really think about end users need to have an easy way to do customizations and automations. And that's basically because there is data. What am I supposed to do with that? Well, I want to organize the data. I want to track something. I want to make sure that when people come to the list, they're able to see the things the way they're supposed to see. If something is important, I want to highlight that. So things like that, we really want to have end users feel that these are really simple things and intuitive things that you can go configure. So we're making a ton of investments in that area. And as you go through the end, we do feel there is a good continuum when you decide now it's the time to go build much powerful integrated solutions, right? So you could have your Power Apps, you could have your flow and run through business processes. You could go customize the list form the way you want, getting not only the data from the current list, but also maybe getting data from another list. So there are lots of possibilities now with these tool sets from Microsoft to go structure the business process you have. So that's the way how we are looking at driving business process across the different users that we see every day. And with native efficiency, we are very close to releasing the easy list creation. I think most of you should have it, at least in your first release. And if you are in the targeted, the production tenants, you should have it. The Excel is coming soon in Q1. So once we deliver that, you'll be able to go to the new list experience and do from an Excel file. Teams integration, you can add a tab, the list tab in Teams in a channel, and it'll have the same experience as you would have in the SharePoint site. And also you could now add pages and as well along with the list. So there's a ton of improvements in quick edits and list Webpart as well, especially with dynamic content. So if you want to get some data from another Webpart and based on that filter the list Webpart, or send the data of the list Webpart to another Webpart so it can filter accordingly, the Webpart to Webpart connections in the old world. There's a ton of updates there as well. Now, all of those, if you go to this Ignite Talk link, which is Microsoft Ignite 2019/STR30, Lincoln has some really awesome demos showing each of those things that I was talking about in the native efficiency. I'm not going to go through those, but I'm going to focus more on the simple customization and the integrated solutions. So simple customization, we started with really giving power users the ability to format list columns and views through JSON, right? And we know it has got a ton of usage. People love it. Even people that are not familiar with JSON, we saw them getting up to date with JSON and basically working through the quirks, and we saw an awesome community participation. We have GitHub repos with columns and view examples, format as examples. So we went to the next step in SharePoint conference we started and showed you how we are using now the same JSON, but driving the end user productivity by giving them the user experience in list so you don't have to really type JSON. So we are adding a ton of improvements to that project going forward. So you can see that we have some options like conditional color coding, a rule builder that you can use to build rules and drive formatting through that. We also have rich text capabilities as well for applying formatting. So if you want to change the font, if you want to apply borders. So I'll show you a demo that will make more sense. We're also making improvements to having simple customizations available out of the box in the list forms, so you don't have to go to Power Apps to do those simple things. Now, those simple things could be, many different things that you might think about, and you can categorize simple or hard. But we're starting with three important things that we have heard from customers every time we talk about this. Reordering the fields, right? I want to reorder the fields in the form. I want to show hide fields because I don't want this field to show up when I am entering or editing the form, but I do want to see that field in the view. And finally, you also have the ability to conditionally show hide fields. It's not just about showing and hiding, but I do want to have this field show when another column value is equal to something, right? A very typical scenario that we see every day that list users go through. So we are adding those features. Today, I think you should have reordering the fields available, at least in your targeted release tenant or first release. Very soon it will be available for all production tenants, reorder and show hide fields. The conditional show hide field is slated for Q1 next year. So let's go to the demo. So here I have a list with features, pretty simple list, nothing complex here. But if I want to make this list now more feature-rich with the ability to let people know how every row item is going to affect based on, let's say, review date, I can do that very easily with the conditional formatting. So alternating row styles was something that we saw. But let's look at conditional formatting, right? And here, as soon as I go, I have the option to add rules. Now, there is a rule for all values, right? Let's add a rule and say if the review date is before today. So you can see that how easily now I can do this without needing to go write a JSON. I can choose today, which is straightforward, or specific date if I want to pick a specific date. Let's just choose today. And now I can add more conditions to it so that I can do and or. But also now I get the option to decide how that row will look, right? So I can click the pencil icon to edit, and I can say, well, I want it to be sort of red and teal and orange. But now I have the option of more styles. So if I do more styles, I get more options, obviously, with the more styles wording. I can configure the font. I can do bold, so it's much nicer when you look at with the background color. If I want, I can change the color of the text too. So let's put it red. I can also have a border, right? And I can put the border style here as well as the border color to be red. So really, really telling people that, hey, the review date is way over the limit. And I can go back again, and you'll see that rule is over here. And for all values, I can say, yeah, that's fine. I can choose blue, right? And I can do the same thing. I can go into more styles. I can bold it. And if I want to, I can also give a border and just have a color to it. Now, that is really, really simple. With few steps, I was able to do the formatting. And now if I save it, that's going to save the formatting for this particular view. The same options are available for the columns as well. Let's say if you have a priority, for example, I can format this column. For this particular thing, I can say if priority is equal to 1, I'm going to say more styles, and I get more support here because it's a number column. I get icons and borders as well. And because it's not a view, I can apply this styling for specific columns. So I can mark this as very important, right? And I can also make this, I don't know, let's make it purple. And I can save this. So that's one rule. I can have if priority is equal to 2. Similarly, I can select another icon, right? So it's really simple to now configure these rules and have them show up in your view formatters. Now, the another thing we were talking about was the ability to show hide columns. So when you have the feature, if you go to the edit form, you'll now see two options. One is show hide and one is customize the Power Apps. So obviously, customize the Power Apps will take you to the Power Apps. Let's look at show hide columns. So now I can simply rearrange the columns very easily here that will apply to the list forms, which is out of the box forms. And I can also see, you can also see that I already have two things hidden. Title is required, so you can't hide it or show because it's a required field. But priority contact has a condition. And the condition is really simple. It uses the Excel style formulas. And it says if priority is equal to 1, show the field. If not, don't show the field. It's really, really simple, targeting a very straightforward scenario. What is the condition and what am I supposed to do, which is true or false? True means it'll show the column, false means it'll hide the column. So with that in place, you can see that now I have the ability to, if I edit this item, the priority is 3. Obviously, I'm missing a column. As soon as I type 1 and move away, you can see I got the priority contact column. Again, I'm typing 2 and tab. You can see the column go away. If I type 1, tab, I see the column come back, right? So really simple expression, which is Excel expressions that you can use to do this. Also, you can see the team size. It's something maybe you're doing it through a flow or some other means. You really don't want people to enter it. You might figure it out and do it. So if you don't want to show that, you can go and just take it out and then save it. And now the team size will go away from the form. So these are the simple customization options we are doing in the list out-of-the-box forms. And what we are trying to also work with Power Apps integration piece is that when you do customize with Power Apps, we are bringing all of these settings right now, except the condition. If you have reorder or show height fields, we will respect that and also have that brought into the custom forms when you click Customize with Power Apps. And that's what we mean when we talk about continuum, right? We give the abilities out of the box, and when you go and build an integrated solution, we take those settings and drop you with the same place where the custom form is set up, so that any user can go do it, and then you bring in some consultants or even yourself going and doing Customize with Power Apps. You can start with the same settings that you had in the out-of-the-box form. So that's the demo for simple customization. So integrated solutions, I think this isn't new. We have a ton of integrations for end users or power users to go and do different things, especially in SharePoint. We have page approvals. By the way, hub join approvals is available in targeted release if you haven't seen the message center post. So you can try that too. Custom forms and other flow integration features in SharePoint. Of course, if people want a simple solution to get data and have surveys, we do have Microsoft Forms, which we are now seeing being adopted by several end users to go collect and see what responses they get. With Flow, you can easily now move those to a list as well. So I wanted to just spend some time and talk about the different things we released since SharePoint conference. We did release a ton of things, and it really went into looking at for Flow and Power Automate. It really looked into what are the user voice items can we go and look at fixing in the product or bringing those into the product. So we went and targeted the checkout, check-in scenarios, which was one of the top asked for, not just through user voice, but also through customer request. We also created the ability to create a folder. It's very simple now. We also have the ability to grant access to a file or an item and stop sharing a file or an item. Now, one of the feedback I hear is that, great, you have the ability to grant access, which is basically the set item level permissions. It's not working with SharePoint groups. Unfortunately, our investments are in the modern groups scenarios, and the modern SharePoint sites are really set up to function as an entity across M365 platform, especially with groups, right? So we are making sure that the solutions we build for customers are really ensuring that they have long-term support. So SharePoint groups are great if you're working in a non-group solution. So right now we don't have support for that. We only have support for modern groups. So if you go to grant access, you will get the same set of permission levels that you see in a group, read, edit kind of thing. And it matches very well with the ability to grant access if you go through a SharePoint user interface. So that's the support we have. Unfortunately, we don't have support for SharePoint groups. It could come later, but it may not change this action. There would be a separate action to say get SharePoint group identity or something like that. Request sign-off, we did a ton of reliability fixes, especially if you require approval and you open the document. Now it won't affect that error that you are getting that, hey, we couldn't really complete the process, but the document is approved kind of message. So we fixed that issue for request sign-off. There are a ton of updates to guest access support and authorization updates. Power Apps also has get access support. Flow supports guest access through B2B scenarios. So if you are Contoso and you have AdventureWorks coming in with Flow license and working in Contoso, Flow will use the license of that company and acquire that and use it in your tenant. However, we don't have external users, as in not a B2B user support for Flow yet. Authorization updates, we did support improvements to conditional access claims and delegated authorization scenarios. So if you have a conditional access claim, your laptop needs to be used only in a specific location, and you move away from that and you go try to use Flow, it will tell you that you can't use Flow from SharePoint as well. So we did all of those improvements in Power Automate. Power Apps, we released the delegation for complex types, choice, lookup, person. We also have guest access support for custom forms. So if you invite a guest user to a site, the custom form will work for them if they are invited to collaborate on a list. And finally, we have the maker improvements. I think it's really improving the user experience for makers to do the things they want to do in the Power App Studio. And there's a ton of improvements coming later this year and next year. But really, it comes down to, are we progressing there? And we're making great progress there. Today, if you see something is really hard in the studio, I know we have a ton of feedback on that in that space. I just want to make sure that you understand that we are making a ton of improvements in that space. So other things, some things like content approval status, content approval comments, and sensitivity label, especially if you had configured security and compliance labels, all of those are available in Flow and Power Apps now. So you can have a document library, content approval, and say this, what's the content approval status for this library, for the document. You will get that in Flow as well as in Power Apps, which I know many people, many customers were using that to trigger more business processes through Power Apps and Flow. Right. So I want to quickly talk about that. Workflow and InfoPath are pretty much, you should consider them no longer the recommended path for building business processes. So future is now. I think we are investing a ton here now, both in the product as well as in the transition. So if you're working with the customer and understanding when is the time for me to move, it is now. We are making, basically working with customers to look at how they're using InfoPath, how they're using workflows in SharePoint Designer, and really looking at how we transition them to Power Apps and Power Automate. And one of the things we learned a lot is people really wanted an understanding of what is going on in their tenant and how how their users are using these tools. So the Modernization Scanner now has the ability to give you a report on workflows and InfoPath usage. So I would highly recommend to download the latest. It gives you a really detailed analysis for workflows and InfoPath. And the plus for using the scanner tool is if you use it for workflows, you will get the ability to see the upgradability score of the workflows. Here are the workflows that are like 75%, you can convert them. 50%, you can convert them because of these different things, right? And for InfoPath, you get what are the web forms and what are the client forms and which ones were accessed, modified last by users. So really useful. Bert has done an awesome job for this tool. And I do want to say that this is an open source product. We have customers taking this open source product and customizing the tool for workflows and InfoPath to include some of their specific deployments and specific controls that they have built and specific use cases they think matters to them when it's considering which workflows are important, which InfoPath forms are important. Customers are taking that and customizing the tool to scan for those specific things. So don't think this as a product. It is an ongoing effort that we are trying to improve. So if you want to participate, we are very open to welcome you into the PNP community and provide updates, as well as if you want your customers to adopt this so they don't really have to do it. It's an open source tool. You can do that as well. 2026 is here. It's almost here. Unless we stop users, the depth of SharePoint Designer InfoPath increasing in a tenant, you're going to have trouble after 2026. The tools may not be available at all for download. And this is the third time Microsoft extended the date. So it's very highly unlikely that we will extend it again. So this is something you should really, really go look at, talk to your customers, and understand the needs and look at moving customers from workflows and InfoPath to the Power Platform. So what can you do today? Well, in simple terms, you can start scanning, download the Modernization Scanner tool, scan your tenant for workflows and forms, trigger the triage the active and inactive inventory. Like some things may be important, some things you will find out, geez, this was created 2 years ago. Why is this even there? This hasn't published at all, right? So things like that, triage them. And if you have things like you want to go to specific site collection owners, you can go and do that as well. And finally, look at options to turn off SharePoint Workflows and InfoPath. This is something we see now many companies are interested. Options are available in your tenant admin center. And if there is an option, you should go do it today because that's going to help you stop the bleeding in your enterprise to not have more solutions being built in these old tools who are going to get the support very soon. So I want to quickly, I have 15 minutes. I want to quickly go to one thing which I haven't really talked about in recent times, but which is how do we map InfoPath to Power Apps? I think workflow, we are seeing many customers getting there with, here are the things that workflows provide, here are the things that Flow provides. And I had a talk last year on that. Maybe I can give another talk on that later in next year in the PNP call. But really, when you consider moving InfoPath to Power Apps, there are three things you need to understand. Power Apps is not InfoPath. You're not going to find the same thing as you did in InfoPath in Power Apps, or you're not going to find the other way around as well. InfoPath was built when iPhone 4 was released. How many of us have iPhone 4? None of us, right? And let's also understand that Power Platform, which is a platform, has so much more for you to integrate into business process and deliver value. And it's really understanding, hey, 10 years ago, I was doing this. Now, what's my opportunity to get more value? How the things have changed since then, right? It's all cloud solutions. There is like so many other integrated tools available now. How can I get more value out of those Office 365 subscription and license? And your Power Platform gives you that opportunity to connect to those different data sources, even external data sources, much easily than, let's say, in the previous world when we had those tools. So one of the things I did was I mapped the terminology keys that InfoPath folks are familiar with to Power Apps, right? So in InfoPath, everything is a form. In Power App, everything is an app, and the app will have forms, right? List and library forms in Power Apps becomes custom forms. Fields are still fields, controls are still controls, but you also got the opportunity to build components, which is a way to distribute a set of controls together. Repeating tables in InfoPath have basically becomes repeating content using the gallery control. I'm going to show you a demo right now how to do that. And then we have data. So that's how you connect it to different data sources. In Power Apps world, it becomes the connectors and connections. Rules really becomes the things that you apply to properties of the control, and you use expressions to do that. And finally, we have InfoPath Designer. Here we have the web-based product Power Apps Studio. So I'm going to quickly do the demo, but if you go to this link, which is my talk, BRK2294 Ignite Talk, you can see my full demo and more information around how we can modernize InfoPath to Power Apps. So I presented with Emma Cooper, who's one of the PMs in the Power Apps world. So I want to quickly show demo for integrated solutions. This is going to be repeating tables. So if you want to see the full demo, really thanks to Shane, who has been doing a lot of Power Apps work. I think he does nothing but Power Apps. He went with this model, taking the same concept as we envisioned to like gallery controls or the repeating tables, right? So if you use that model, how would repeating tables work and what are the things you need to do? This is the link. I think if there is someone doing the chat, please paste this information in the chat. And it's a three-part series. For folks that are not familiar with Power Apps, it might take some time, but for folks familiar with Power Apps, you will find this to be really, really simple way to bring repeating tables. So I'm going to show you the demo for that. I built a simple thing based on Shane Young's documentation. So here's my regions. So I have multiple, I want to add multiple rows of regions in one go. So here's my Power App, and here's my regions Power App I built. So maybe in another call I can go in detail, but I'm going to show you the high level pieces that makes this work. So if you play this, I can add regions. I get the options to add. So I can add USA, I can have language English, and owner. This is something very important, right? Now, in normal integrations with data sources, especially with SharePoint, let's say, I will have the ability to search for users because I already know it's a people field. But what if I actually want to do something like repeating table? Well, I have the model of enter the email or the name, and I can search Office 365, and it's going to come back with an email address. Great. Now I can add this in the repeating table. I can go back. I can say New Zealand. Oops, sorry, English, New Zealand, and owner. I can again search for Nestor, and then that hopefully comes back with his email address. And I can add another one. India, let me add Hindi, and owner, I don't know, yeah, okay, Patty, right? Now, if I save, only then this is going to go to SharePoint. Look at how fast that was. And now if I go back to my list, you should see USA, New Zealand. And the reason why it didn't add India is because I did not click plus. I basically did not enter that into the collection. So that's why you didn't see that coming up here. But now this is really simple, right? Now you can like beautify this app and do whatever you want to do to make it much nicer for users. So the real sauce is in the gallery control. So the gallery control needs to hold values before you push to the data source. So what I'm doing here is I'm holding the values in a local collection called line items. And how that is get initialized is when you click add regions, I'm initializing a collection. It's basically clear collectors. It's clearing everything and it's readying the object for collection. And with the model, region name, region language, region owner, and I also have a add icon and a delete icon as well. But add icon is basically the key thing that I have here with true or false. And finally, I'm using user mail strings that I control for getting the data of the user email from Office 365. And if you see the gallery control, each of the text box, so this text box right here, region name is mapped to region name, right? So that's the property you saw in the line item collection. And similarly for language, it's mapped to the region language. For owner, it's mapped to in a different way where it's checking some conditions and saying it is user mail and then mapped to region owner. Now, what happens when I click search is that I am using the Office 365 connector to search the user based on the text value that people have entered into the text box. And then if I find something, I am getting the mail property from that object. And I'm just getting the first object. So you could have more conditions to select the user you want. And then I am setting that into a local object, again, user mail. And then I'm setting the text owner email control.text property to the user mail. So that's how I get the value for the user email from Office 365 and then set it. Now, when I click plus, it basically patches, right? You're adding a value to the collection. So what is the value I need to add? Well, whatever I have in the current line item in the gallery control. So I get line items, and this item refers to the current item. And then I set the values for region name as the respective control values. And finally, I set the add icon false. So I don't want to see the add icon anymore, right? I want to see the delete icon going forward so that I can have users delete the line item rather than having more confusion over showing the add icon. And finally, I also now collect an empty line item. So I added one, and I also want to show an empty line item so user can start typing the details for the next line item. And then since I'm using a local variable to also collect the email, which is coming from Office 365, I set that as empty. So the email control text box also has an empty value. So that's the way how I am doing the repeating table with the plus sign and also having a way for users to delete. And finally, the secret sauce, when you save. Now the logic is you have everything in the line items collection. So let's iterate through that line item collections and patch the SharePoint data source, right? The SharePoint data source is I've connected to the regions list in my site, and I'm saying the patch function, which is saying patch this data source, in which case it is a regions list, and patch with the default values that I want to pass, which is all the columns, right? And now it's very easy. Title is going to be the region name property when you iterate through every line item. Language is going to be the region language. And the owner, this is where it gets complex. It's a person column in SharePoint. I know this really looks ugly. Trust me, we're going to make this better. And the reason why we are doing this and working on this and showing this is because we can learn these things and go back in the product and fix these things. So this is one of the things we certainly have in our radar to simplify repeating tables, especially for users coming from InfoPath. So it's you would have to right now cut, copy, paste this and basically use it in your solution if you're doing it. I think Shane has this in his blog post as well. So basically this, you're giving the OData representation of the person column in SharePoint. That is how it's represented in Power Apps. So you're using that, and you're basically mapping the region owner, which is the email address, to that particular field. And finally, this will go and patch the data in SharePoint. After it comes back, we're basically now setting everything to empty list, right? So we clear collect. We are clearing the collection and getting it ready for the next set of rows to be added to SharePoint. So that's how we do repeating tables in Power Apps. It's really a little bit harder today for especially users that are used to doing the UX way, but this is something we are looking to improve next year and see how far we can push the product to do the thing for the user rather than users specifying all of these stuff to do in using expressions. But it's a good start. We have seen a lot of people adopt this. So if you are looking for like repeating tables is the one that stops me from moving InfoPath to Power Apps, well, fear not. We have options and solutions for you. And these are all supported ways to build these things. So that's another good thing. So that's the end of my talk. There are a lot of customer stories if you're looking to look at how other companies are transforming their business process using Power Apps and Microsoft Flow, Power Automate. You can go to the link and basically look at all of the stories in detail. There's also a roadmap slide. If you go to my talk from Ignite, I have the roadmap slide there as well. And this presentation, if you go to the Ignite link again, you can download it. So if you are looking for that, that's also available. Well, that's for me. That's it from me today.
So, Jackson, there was a few questions which we didn't actually go through. Just I'm going to steal the presentation. I'm going to share my screen and we'll flip it here. And let's go to the Q&A. There was one question which was related on the filtering of column visibility. So that was around, is the filtering of column visibility in the lists, is it based on a content type or is it based on a list? So can you filter out columns based on a content type?
It is for the columns available in all content types.
Yeah.
So that's the answer to that. We don't do content type filtering.
Yet. Yes. One step at a time, one step at a time. Now, the next one was interesting as well, because this is in the top 5 of user voice. Any news on the customizing a modern list form using SPFX?
So we are thinking around having JSON formatting than SPFX. It's very early in the stage, but we will have more updates as we progress in the next year on giving the same abilities how you do view and column formatting can we take that learning and feedback and drive out-of-the-box list form customizations as well?
Yeah, I think the question is more on the fact that pro developers want to override the editing form and view form and the whole experience.
Right. So we, I mean, I'll be open and honest. We are going to first fix the platform to allow it to do for a common way to customize the list forms. We don't have that. And that's something we are focused on. Once we cross that stage and we have the ability for both power users and UX-driven customizations, we can apply that. Now, one good thing is that we have, it's all JSON formatters scripting, which exists in SharePoint through views and formatters. We can easily bring that to SPFX if you want to. But the whole notion of give me the entire form so I can do whatever I want to do, that work item, we are a long way ahead to do that direction yet.
Yeah, and if there's a high demand for it, please vote to user voice entry. User voice absolutely has an impact on our prioritization. That's why we are collecting those votes. If it's not, so that's how things happen. Now, coming back on Jim Duncan's comment, so if a column exists into a content type, we will hide it. It will hidden in both. Answer is true on the chat window. But we're running out of time. Thank you, Jax.